Part 1. Fundamentals of Wealth. Chapter number 1. Introduction. The truth they don't teach in school. Most of us grew up hearing the same promise. If you study hard, if you strive to get good grades, if you earn a college degree, then you'll be guaranteed a good job, a decent salary, and a comfortable life. That narrative, repeated for generations, was passed down from parents to children, from teachers to students, and from governments to citizens as an absolute truth, almost like a natural law that no one dared to question. However, when we look at the reality experienced by millions of people around the world, we find a painful contradiction. People with accumulated degrees, diplomas, and certificates, but with empty accounts, mounting debt, and a life far from the promised financial stability. The myth of traditional education has failed many because we confuse academic instruction with life education, especially when it comes to money. The school system was designed in a different era, in a world where the priority was preparing young people for work in factories, offices, or repetitive positions within large institutions. They were trained as obedient workers, efficient employees, but not as wealth creators, entrepreneurs, or investors. The school curriculum taught math, literature, geography, and history, which are undoubtedly valuable for general knowledge, but at no point did it address how taxes work, how to manage a credit card, how to invest in stocks or real estate, how to save for retirement, or how to wisely manage a salary. Thus, millions of young people leave school knowing how to solve equations, but without knowing how a mortgage works, knowing the geography of distant countries, but without understanding the economics of their own household. The difference between academic intelligence and financial intelligence is so profound that it often becomes a silent trap. A person with high academic intelligence may have doctorates, awards, and prizes, but if they don't understand how to manage money, they will live with financial stress, constant worry, and dependence on a salary that never seems to reach them. Meanwhile, someone with basic financial intelligence, even without a college degree, can build solid assets, live debt-free, and in many cases, achieve financial independence that allows them to choose how they want to live. Warren Buffett understood this from a young age. While other classmates focused on acing exams, he spent hours reading stock prices in the newspaper, buying small stakes in local businesses, and learning how money worked in the real world. A telling example occurred when Buffett was just 11 years old. While most children were thinking about toys or games, he decided to buy 3 shares of Citi's Service Preferred at $38 each. Shortly after, the shares dropped to $27, a loss that would have sent any adult into a panic, but Buffett decided to wait. When the price rose to $40, he quickly sold, making a small profit. However, what happened next was the real lesson. The shares continued to rise until they reached over $200. That moment shaped his life, because he understood 2 fundamental things. First, that money can grow exponentially if you have patience. And second, that the most valuable education isn't always found in school textbooks, but in direct experience and a practical understanding of the world. Young Buffett understood what school never taught him, that money isn't dictated by diplomas, but by principles. The discipline of waiting, the ability to control emotion, the courage to act when others hesitate. These are lessons that don't fit into a written exam, but they make the difference between a life of dependence and a life of freedom. While his classmates were worried about learning historical dates for a test, Buffett was understanding the nature of value, human behavior, and the importance of time as a decisive factor in wealth creation. We see this contrast between school and real life every day. Consider a newly graduated doctor who, after more than 10 years of study, starts working in a hospital. His starting salary may seem high compared to the average, but he soon discovers that a large portion of it is spent on taxes, college debt, and basic expenses. His academic education is extraordinary. He can diagnose diseases, save lives, and master scientific knowledge at the highest level. However, his financial education is minimal. He doesn't know how to invest, doesn't understand the importance of income diversification, and often ends up trapped in a cycle of constant work to pay off debts that never go down. Meanwhile, a small business owner, without a college degree but with a practical vision, can build a business, reinvest his profits, and in 10 years, achieve a net worth greater than that of many professionals with postgraduate degrees. Warren Buffett summed it up with a simple phrase: the school system rewards correct answers, but life rewards correct decisions. School measures your ability to memorize and repeat information, but money measures your ability to make wise decisions, manage uncertainty, and think long-term. Buffett learned outside the classroom because he understood that the rules of the financial game weren't written in the textbooks assigned to him in class. He sought out other sources, biographies of entrepreneurs, company financial reports, conversations with people who were already generating wealth. That was his true university. Many think Buffett was a natural genius, but the truth is more inspiring. He was a constant student, not of traditional school, but of the school of life. By the time he was 16, he had already read every financial book available in the Omaha library. He didn't wait for a teacher to assign him a topic. He sought out the knowledge he needed to create the future he wanted on his own initiative. That's the big lesson. Financial education is a path one must choose for oneself, because it isn't part of conventional curricula. But before continuing, please share your audiobook in the comments below, and if this message resonates with you, give it a thumbs up and share it. This way, you'll be sure not to miss any content that nourishes your mind and brings you closer every day to the life you truly deserve. There's no time to waste. Now, let's continue. Chapter number 2. The value of the right mindset. The biggest difference between those who build wealth and those who constantly struggle to make ends meet isn't the money they receive, but the way they think. Mindset is the starting point that sets the course for every financial life. A middle-class person, even one who earns a high salary, typically thinks in terms of spending. How much can I buy? How can I improve my lifestyle? What luxury can I treat myself now that I have a little more money? In contrast, a wealth-minded person asks completely different questions. How can I make this money work for me? What can I invest it in to generate more income in the future? How do I protect this capital and make it grow without putting it at unnecessary risk? The classic example is what happens every time someone receives a raise or an extra bonus at work. The middle-class mindset reacts almost automatically with the idea of upgrading their spending. Changing their car, moving to a more expensive neighborhood, buying new clothes, upgrading their phone. It's a natural impulse, because society teaches us that having more means spending more, that success is measured by what we show others. But the wealth mindset reacts differently. Instead of thinking about spending, it thinks about multiplying. A raise isn't seen as permission to spend more, but as an opportunity to accelerate wealth building. While one seeks immediate gratification, the other thinks about long-term growth. Warren Buffett has proven this with his own lifestyle. Despite being one of the richest men on the planet, he still lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for just $31,000. He never let himself be trapped by the need to demonstrate his wealth with mansions or extravagant luxuries. For him, true satisfaction lies not in showing off, but in seeing his money grow through solid investments. His mindset was always focused on simplicity and the long term, two virtues that are rarely taught, but are essential to achieving financial freedom. Patience is another of the most profitable assets a person can possess. In a fast-paced world, where people want immediate results, the ability to wait and let time do its work is what separates great investors from the rest. Buffett often says that the stock market is a mechanism that transfers money from the impatient to the patient. Those who enter with the idea of getting rich overnight lose sooner or later because they are driven by emotions, by fear when prices fall, and by greed when they rise. On the other hand, those who remain calm and have the discipline to wait can see their investments multiply over the years. A historical example can be found in Buffett's investment in Coca-Cola. In the late 1980s, while many were focusing on trendy companies or new technological trends, Buffett decided to invest heavily in a classic, well-known, and seemingly boring company. He bought $1.3 billion worth of shares. At the time, many critics considered it an unexciting and even conservative decision. However, over the years, that investment became one of the most profitable of his entire career, generating billions in profits. The lesson lies not only in which company he chose, but in the patience with which he maintained that investment for decades, untempted by rapid moves or market pressure. Patience also applies to everyday life. A wealth-minded person understands that financial success isn't built in months, but in years. They understand that saving a small percentage each month, even if it seems insignificant at first, grows over time into a powerful sum thanks to the compounding effect. Meanwhile, the middle-class mindset gives up early. They think saving $10 or $20 isn't worth it, that it's too little to make a difference. This lack of long-term vision is what prevents many from taking the first step. The wealthy, on the other hand, know that every seed, no matter how small, has the potential to become a tree if given enough time to grow. Discipline is the pillar that supports this entire process. It's useless to have a financial plan if you don't have the consistency to apply it every day, even when it's not easy or when no one is looking. Buffett constantly repeats that his success is not due to extraordinary decisions made once, but to the discipline of following the same principles for decades. Buying solid companies, reinvesting dividends, avoiding unnecessary debt, and not spending on luxuries that don't add value. It may sound simple, and it is, but the difficult part is maintaining that simplicity year after year, resisting fads, social pressure, and the desire for immediate gratification. An example of discipline is seen in the way Buffett manages his daily habits. He spends most of his time reading, reflecting, and thinking, rather than constantly busy with meetings or urgent tasks. His discipline isn't limited to money, but to his overall lifestyle. He lives with simple routines, avoids distractions, and maintains focus on what truly matters. This ability to simplify life is another characteristic of a wealth mindset. While many complicate their finances with multiple debts, credit cards, loans, and unnecessary expenses, Buffett teaches that the key is to keep everything simple and manageable. Imagine two scenarios. In the first, a person earns a good salary, but each month they have to pay the mortgage on an overly large house, the payments on the latest model car, the monthly payments on several credit cards, and the costs of maintaining a lifestyle that impresses others. They live on the edge, with little room for savings and a heavy reliance on their job to avoid losing it all. In the second scenario, someone with the same income decides to live in a modest house, drives a used car, and pays most of their expenses in cash. That person saves and invests the difference each month, and after a few years, they have an investment fund that begins to generate passive income. Who is really richer? The answer is obvious. Wealth is not measured by what you spend, but by what you keep and grow. Buffett has said that the secret of his success is that he never tried to be the smartest, the fastest, or the most innovative. What he did was be the most patient, the most disciplined, and the most focused on the essentials. While the world is in a hurry, he remains calm. While others seek complexity, he seeks simplicity. That's the right mindset, not to be swept along by the current of society, but to remain clear about what truly matters in the long run. The right mindset is, in essence, a shift in perspective. It's stopping thinking in terms of consumption and starting to think in terms of investment. It's learning to delay immediate reward in order to obtain a greater reward in the future. It's living simply, not because you can't afford more, but because you understand that true freedom lies in not depending on money to make decisions. It's being patient when others despair, and being disciplined when others give up. That was the mindset that turned a young man from Omaha into one of the richest and most respected men in the world. And it's the same mindset that anyone, regardless of background or educational attainment, can begin to cultivate today. Part 2. Principles of Money According to Buffett. Chapter number 3. The Power of Spending Less Than You Earn. The simplest, yet most powerful principle in wealth creation is to spend less than you earn. Although it sounds obvious, almost elementary, it's a rule most people don't follow. Modern society constantly pushes us to consume, and the message we receive time and again is that our worth is associated with what we display. The clothes we wear, the car we drive, the neighborhood we live in. Without realizing it, we enter a race for appearances that absorbs every bit of income we receive and even pushes us to spend what we don't have through credit and debt. And therein lies the trap. If each month we spend the same as or more than what comes into our account, there will never be capital available to invest, and without investment, there can be no long-term wealth. Warren Buffett understood this from the beginning. The true formula for financial freedom isn't income minus expenses equals savings, but income minus expenses equals investment. Because money that's simply saved, stashed in a checking account or in cash, loses value over time due to inflation. On the other hand, money that's invested becomes a silent worker that makes more money, day and night, even while we sleep. The key isn't how much you earn, but how much you manage to keep and multiply. A simple example can be found in something as mundane as a daily cup of coffee. Suppose someone spends $3 every morning on store-bought coffee. In a month, that's $90. In a year, more than $1,000. If that person decided to make coffee at home and allocate those $1,000 a year to an investment with an average annual return of 8%, in 20 years they would have accumulated more than $45,000. What seems like a small and almost irrelevant expense becomes, with time and discipline, a sum capable of changing a family's financial course. That's the power of the snowball. Small, consistent savings that, when accumulated and invested, grow into enormous sums thanks to time and compound interest. Buffett has used this snowball metaphor on multiple occasions. Imagine a long, snowy hill. You start with a small, almost insignificant ball, and you push it down. At first, it barely grows. It seems like nothing is happening. But as it rolls and rolls, it accumulates more snow, becoming bigger, heavier, and more unstoppable. This is how money works when you invest. At first, the results seem slow, almost frustrating, but after a few years, the ball becomes so big that it moves forward on its own, multiplying its size exponentially. Most people never reach this stage because they give up too soon or because they never start the process. They spend every dollar that comes into their pocket and justify their decisions with phrases like, "Life is short, you have to enjoy it," or, "When I make more money, then I'll start saving." But lost time never comes back, and the snowball only forms when you give it the chance to roll early. A very illustrative case is that of a couple who earns exactly the same amount, say $2,000 a month each. The first couple decides to live within their means, spending almost all of it on rent, entertainment, travel, and consumer spending. The second couple, on the other hand, lives below their means. Instead of spending the full $2,000, they budget to spend $1,500 and invest the other $500 each month. Over 10 years, this discipline allows them to accumulate a fund that not only exceeds $100,000 but also generates passive income on its own. Meanwhile, the first couple, despite having earned the same amount throughout the decade, remains at the same point, with no savings, no investments, and the pressure to continue working to cover every expense. The difference wasn't in their income, it was in their mindset and their ability to spend less than they earn. Most people never accumulate capital because they confuse income with wealth. Many people think that if they earn more money, their financial problems will automatically be solved. But what happens in practice is the opposite. As income increases, so do expenses. This is called lifestyle inflation. A person who earns $1,000 may feel that if they earn $2,000, they would have their life sorted. But when they reach $2,000, they immediately move upmarket. They rent a more expensive apartment, buy a new car, spend more on leisure activities. And so, when they earn $5,000 or $10,000, they are still trapped in the same cycle, because they always spend the same amount or more than they earn. Buffett explained it clearly. No matter how much money you earn, if you don't know how to control it, you will always be essentially poor. An extreme example is seen in the stories of professional athletes or artists who, in just a few years, earn millions of dollars, figures that seem unimaginable to most. However, many of them later end up bankrupt. How is this possible? Because they never learned the basic rule of spending less than they earn and investing the difference. They believed the flow of money would never stop and lived life to the fullest, buying mansions, private planes, jewelry, and excessive luxuries. When fame or their careers stalled, they found they had no investment system working for them. What seemed like an inexhaustible fortune disappeared because it wasn't backed by discipline or financial intelligence. On the other hand, there are examples of people with modest incomes who managed to build modest fortunes throughout their lives simply by applying this rule. There have been documented cases of janitors, school teachers, or nurses who never earned extraordinary salaries, but who lived simply, saved and invested constantly, and at the end of their lives left inheritances worth millions to their families or foundations. No one considered them rich during their lifetime, because they didn't lead an ostentatious lifestyle, but in reality they had achieved a quiet and powerful wealth. The key is to break away from the immediate consumption mentality and adopt a long-term vision. Every unnecessary expense today is a sacrifice for the future. Every dollar spent on something temporary is a dollar less that could have been multiplied in an investment. This doesn't mean living in extreme deprivation, but rather learning to prioritize. It means distinguishing between what is an expense that disappears and what is an investment that lasts. It means postponing certain immediate pleasures to enjoy much greater freedom in the future. The truth Buffett always repeats is that anyone can get started, regardless of income level, because it's not about how much you earn, but how much you choose to keep. The habit of spending less than you earn is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Without that foundation, no investment plan can sustain itself, because there will always be money leaks that impede growth. However, when this rule becomes part of your daily life, everything else begins to fall into place. Savings grow, investment opportunities appear, and the snowball effect begins to roll. Chapter number 4. The Art of Value Investing. Value investing is one of the most powerful, yet most misunderstood, concepts in the world of finance. Warren Buffett didn't invent this method, but he perfected it and made it the foundation of his entire fortune. When we talk about value investing, we're referring to the practice of seeking out companies whose market price is below their true intrinsic value. It's like someone putting a $100 bill up for sale for $60. The bill is still worth the same, but the market is offering it at a discount. The secret lies in developing the ability to recognize those opportunities and, most importantly, having the courage to act when others won't. The stock market is like a permanent auction where prices rise and fall, often irrationally. Most people are driven by these collective emotions. When everyone is buying, they buy too. When everyone is selling, they sell too. Buffett learned to do exactly the opposite. His famous quote sums it up perfectly: "Be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy." This means that the best opportunities arise in moments of panic, when the majority flees and prices fall below their true value. But taking advantage of these moments requires a cool head, patience, and solid analysis. An emblematic case occurred in 1964, when Buffett decided to invest in American Express. At the time, the company was facing a scandal known as the salad oil scandal. Basically, a merchant had used tanks filled with water, covered with a layer of soybean oil, to make people believe he had large reserves of the product and thus defraud the company. When the truth came to light, the market reacted with fear, American Express stock plummeted, and many thought the company was doomed. But Buffett didn't give in to the collective panic. Instead of focusing on the momentary scandal, he analyzed the company's true value. It had a strong brand, a profitable business model, and a huge, loyal customer base. He understood that, despite the reputational damage, the company's intrinsic value remained intact. So he invested a large portion of his partnership's capital in those shares. Over time, American Express recovered, strengthened its brand, and the stock multiplied in value. Buffett had applied the essence of value investing, looking beyond the market noise and focusing on the real value of a business. Another unforgettable example is his investment in Coca-Cola. In the late 1980s, the market was fascinated by new, fast-growing technology companies, while Coca-Cola, a soft drink company that had already been operating for more than a century, seemed boring. But Buffett wasn't impressed by fads. He analyzed the company and found competitive advantages that went far beyond the beverage itself. The Coca-Cola brand was recognized in every corner of the globe, its distribution network was practically unsurpassed, and its ability to reach consumers of all ages and cultures was unique. He understood that, while it wasn't an exciting company, it was a long-term cash-generating machine. So he invested more than $1 billion in Coca-Cola stock. 3 decades later, that investment has not only multiplied several times over but continues to generate millions in dividends each year. It's a perfect example of how patience and long-term vision can transform a decision into a permanent source of wealth. What makes value investing special isn't just finding cheap companies, but distinguishing between those that are temporarily undervalued and those that are truly worthless. A company may be cheap because it's going through a temporary crisis, but its business model remains sound. Or it may be cheap because it's simply in decline and its future is uncertain. The skill lies in recognizing the difference. Buffett does this by analyzing factors such as the company's competitive advantages, the quality of its management, its track record of cash generation, and its market position. It's not about guessing what the next fad will be, but about identifying enduring businesses that will still be profitable 10, 20, or 30 years from now. The art of value investing also requires a keen ability to go against the grain. In 2008, during the global financial crisis, when markets were plummeting and most people were panicking, Buffett did exactly the opposite. He invested billions in companies like Goldman Sachs and General Electric. While everyone was talking about collapse and catastrophe, he saw opportunities. He knew that these companies, despite the blow, had solid foundations and, in time, would recover. History proved him right. Years later, stocks had soared, and his investments generated enormous profits. That's the value of staying calm when everyone else is losing their minds. Most people, however, find this strategy almost impossible to implement. The reason is psychological. When prices fall, fear grips people. They see their money dwindling in a matter of days and prefer to sell to protect themselves, even if it means missing out on a great opportunity. On the other hand, when prices rise and everyone is talking about profits, they feel they can't stay away and buy at the worst possible moment, when the market is already overvalued. That's how mass psychology works. Buffett managed to train his mind to do exactly the opposite, and that's what has allowed him to amass one of the largest fortunes in history. But this principle isn't limited to large stock market investments. It also applies to everyday life. Think about buying a house, a car, or even business decisions. Most people buy when prices are high because they feel like everyone else is doing it, or because they don't want to wait. The value investing mindset is about observing, waiting patiently for the right moment, and acting decisively when a real opportunity arises. It means seeing value beyond price and having the courage to act against the crowd. Buffett often says that investing is simple, but not easy. It's simple because the basic rule is clear: buy solid businesses at reasonable prices and hold them for the long term. But it's not easy because it involves fighting human emotions, resisting the temptation to go with the crowd, and enduring uncertainty without panicking. What distinguishes a true value investor is not their ability to read complicated balance sheets, but their emotional fortitude to wait and remain steadfast in their convictions. The art of value investing is, in essence, a philosophy of life. It's learning to look beyond the surface, to not get carried away by the noise of the moment, and to invest in what has solid foundations. It's understanding that wealth isn't built overnight, but rather through smart decisions made time and again over the years. Warren Buffett demonstrated this with American Express, with Coca-Cola, with dozens of companies in which he knew how to see value where others only saw problems. And the lesson is clear. It's not about following trends. It's about finding what's truly valuable and having the patience to wait for the market to recognize it. Chapter number 5. Time as your greatest ally. Time is, without a doubt, the most powerful resource an investor can have at their disposal. It's not the initial money, nor even the technical knowledge that makes the biggest difference, but the ability to let money grow and work for years thanks to compound interest. Albert Einstein, who is rarely associated with finance, used to say that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And it is, because it's the force that allows a small amount to grow into a great fortune simply with the passage of time. But herein lies the secret. The key isn't so much how much you earn at the beginning, but how long you allow your money to multiply. Imagine you have two friends. The first starts saving and investing at age 20, contributing a modest amount each month and stopping at age 30. The second doesn't invest anything until age 30, but from then on, he starts contributing twice what the first did, and does so steadily until age 60. Who do you think will have more money at the end? Surprisingly, the first, despite having invested less money and for only 10 years, ends up wealthier than the second. Why? Because he started early and allowed his money to work for him longer. The power of compound interest gave him an advantage that even his friend's extra effort couldn't overcome. That's the magic of time. The earlier you start, the more exponentially your money will grow. What makes compound interest so fascinating is that at first it seems almost insignificant. In the first few years, the returns seem small and even boring. It's like planting a seed in the ground. At first, you don't see anything. No leaves, no flowers, no fruit. But beneath the surface, something is happening. The seed takes root, strengthens, and prepares to grow. The same thing happens with money. In the first few years, the returns barely seem to move. But as the decades pass, that seed grows into a towering tree that bears abundant fruit. The secret is to resist the temptation to pull the plant out prematurely. A classic example is Benjamin Franklin, one of America's founding fathers. He was a great believer in the power of compound interest. In his will, he left $1,000 to the cities of Boston and Philadelphia, on the condition that it not be used for 100 years and that a portion remain invested for 200 years. After that time, the money had multiplied into an enormous sum, funding hospitals, schools, and community projects. What began as a small sum grew over time into a monumental legacy. Franklin didn't just leave money, he left a lesson. The true power of wealth lies in letting time do its work. Most people, however, underestimate this power. They live their lives thinking in the short term, wanting immediate results, and that's why they never see the true magic of compound interest. They look for the shortcut, the quick win, the financial lottery. But real wealth isn't built through strokes of luck. It's built through discipline, patience, and the ability to let the years work for you. The irony is that, although we all recognize that time passes anyway, few use it as their greatest ally. While most let time simply consume their days, the smart investor turns each day into a silent worker that multiplies their capital. Making money work for you means exactly that. Instead of relying solely on your physical or intellectual effort, you create a system in which every bill, every coin, every dollar invested becomes a worker who never sleeps, never tires, and never asks for a vacation. You can sleep, you can take a day off, you can get sick, but your money keeps working. And the more time you give it, the more workers you'll have on your team. At first, it seems like nothing, just a few bills working for you. But over time, it grows into an army of thousands, even millions, generating income without you having to lift a finger. That's true financial independence. Many people think they need large sums to start investing, but that's a myth. What's really needed is time. $1 invested today is worth much more than $10 invested 20 years from now. The big mistake is procrastination. We always say, when I earn more, I'll start. When I have a better job, I'll invest. When I have extra money, I'll save. But the truth is, there's never enough left, because there will always be excuses, there will always be expenses. Those who wait until they have a lot to start will probably never start. On the other hand, those who start with the little they have, even if it seems insignificant, activate the mechanism of compound interest and gain an unbeatable advantage. Let's look at a numerical example to better understand this. If you invest $1,000 today at 10% per year, after 10 years you'll have $2,593. It doesn't seem like much, right? But if you leave that money for 30 years, you'll have almost $17,500. And if you leave it for 50 years, that small initial investment will have grown into $117,000. And all without having contributed a single cent more. Now imagine if, instead of a one-time $1,000, you had invested $100 every month for those same 50 years. The result would be a fortune. The impressive thing isn't the money you put in, but what time did with it. Therefore, the key is to start as soon as possible. It doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, or 40, it's never too late, but the sooner you do it, the bigger the difference will be. Time can be your greatest enemy if you waste it, or your greatest ally if you use it to your advantage. The money you spend today on unimportant things could, over time, become a fortune that allows you to live freely. And the most surprising thing is that you don't need to be a financial genius or find the perfect investment. You just need discipline, patience, and the determination to get started. Warren Buffett is the living example of this philosophy. He began investing as a child, buying his first stock at age 11. Today, the bulk of his fortune comes not from isolated brilliant decisions, but from the simple fact of having let his investments grow for more than 7 decades. It is often said that Buffett is rich not only because he knows how to invest, but because he started early and never stopped. If he had started in his 30s or 40s, he would probably still be a millionaire, but he wouldn't be one of the richest men in the world. Time was his most powerful partner. Compound interest isn't exclusive to money. It also works in other aspects of life. Habits, for example, are compounded in the same way. Reading 10 pages a day may seem insignificant, but in a year, that's more than 3,600 pages, the equivalent of a dozen books. Exercising 30 minutes a day may seem like little, but over the years, it builds iron health. Everything we repeat and allow to accumulate over time becomes something much bigger than we imagine. Money is just a reflection of this universal law. Small, consistent actions, multiplied by time, generate extraordinary results. The challenge lies in having a long-term vision. We live in a world that rewards the immediate, that pushes us to seek instant gratification. But those who learn to delay the reward, who accept waiting and letting time work its magic, reap the most abundant rewards. It's not about depriving yourself of everything in the present, but rather about balance. Enjoying today, yes, but also sowing for tomorrow. Because the day will come when you will want to rest, you will want freedom, and only those who sow in advance will be able to reap without worry. Time is the great equalizer. We all have 24 hours a day. We all have years that inevitably add up. What makes the difference is not how much time we have, but what we do with it. The poor spend time and money on fleeting things. The rich invest both, knowing that the future will arrive faster than we think. In the end, time is always on your side if you use it wisely. And if you can make time and money work together for you, you will have discovered one of the greatest secrets of wealth. Part 3. Decisions that create wealth. Chapter number 6. The right people and relationships. On the path to financial freedom, few things are as decisive as the people you choose to surround yourself with. Just as a careful investor selects where to invest their money, you must learn to evaluate your relationships as if they were investments. Each person who enters your life represents an influence, positive or negative, that affects your growth, your mindset, and even your financial future. A trustworthy partner can open doors to unimaginable opportunities, while bad company can drag you into debt, bad decisions, and a loss of direction. Understanding that people are either an asset or a liability is one of the most important steps on your path to prosperity. Evaluating people as investments doesn't mean viewing them as objects or numbers, but rather adopting a strategic mindset. Ask yourself, does this person add value to my life or subtract from it? Do they inspire me to grow or drag me down? Do I fully trust their word, or do they always leave me with doubts? Just like with a company, there are people who pay constant dividends in the form of trust, support, wisdom, or motivation. And there are others who, like toxic actions, only generate loss, drama, and frustration. The mistake many make is not filtering their relationships, allowing anyone to remain in their lives without questioning whether they are contributing or draining energy. But you, who aspire to build wealth and freedom, must also be an investor in the human realm. Trust and reputation are more valuable currencies than money itself. Money can be earned and lost, but reputation is an asset that, once destroyed, is difficult to recover. Think of great entrepreneurs who had everything and lost it all due to a scandal, a lie, or a betrayal. Think of leaders who were admired and ended up ruined because they underestimated the power of reputation. In business, people make deals with those they trust, even more than with those who offer the best offer. You can have the best idea in the world, but if your name doesn't generate credibility, you won't get support. That's why protecting your reputation is just as important as protecting your money. In fact, your reputation will often be what allows you to make the most money. Trust is built through small actions repeated over time. Keeping your promises, being punctual, acting with integrity even when no one is looking. These are details that seem small, but when accumulated, they create a solid image of who you are. Like compound interest in finance, reputation is compounded with each consistent action over the years. And like an investment, it can be lost suddenly if not carefully maintained. One lie, one betrayal, one act of selfishness can destroy what took decades to build. That's why those who understand the power of trust treat it like a sacred treasure. Surrounding yourself with people better than you is perhaps the most transformative decision you can make. If you want to grow financially, emotionally, and intellectually, you need to be in an environment that challenges you, that pushes you out of your comfort zone, that shows you what's possible. If you're the smartest in your group, you're in the wrong group. If you're the top earner, you're probably not learning enough. Seek to surround yourself with people who are already at the level you aspire to, because their mindset, habits, and perspectives are contagious. Just as spending time with someone who's sick increases your chances of contagion, spending time with successful people increases the likelihood that you'll adopt their habits and ways of thinking. Think about this. Your life is a reflection of the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If you surround yourself with negative people, who are always complaining, who see problems instead of opportunities, sooner or later that pessimistic outlook will seep into you. If your friends are reckless spenders, sooner or later you'll overspend too. But if you surround yourself with dreamers, builders, investors, people who think big, then your standard of living will naturally rise. It's not about competing with them, but about being inspired to grow alongside them. Surrounding yourself with people better than you also implies humility. It means accepting that you don't know everything, that there is always someone with more experience, more knowledge, or more vision. And instead of feeling envious, you decide to learn. Every conversation with a wise person can save you years of mistakes. Every piece of advice from someone who has already walked the path can save you money, frustration, and time. The secret is to listen more than you speak, to observe more than you give your opinion, to absorb everything you can from those who have already reached where you want to go. But it's also true that it's not enough to surround yourself with the right people. You need to contribute something yourself. Strong relationships aren't built in a one-way street. If you only seek to receive, people will eventually drift away. You need to be a valuable partner, someone who also contributes ideas, energy, support, and trust. Just like with an investment, You can't expect returns if you never contribute capital. Capital in relationships is your time, your loyalty, your willingness to give without always expecting something in return. Some people think financial success depends solely on money, but the reality is that it depends much more on relationships. A referral can open the door to a multi-million-dollar business. A well-timed introduction can connect you with the opportunity of a lifetime. A strong partnership can give you access to resources you never would have gotten on your own. Money flows to trust and well-built networks. Therefore, those who ignore the power of relationships greatly limit their growth. It's also important to learn how to let go of the wrong people. Just as you sell a losing stock to protect your capital, sometimes you must cut relationships that are costing you more than they bring. It's not an act of cruelty, it's an act of self-responsibility. If someone saps your energy, destroys your confidence, or constantly drags you down, you're paying too high a price to maintain that relationship. Life is too short, and your purpose is too valuable to waste resources on toxic relationships. Over time, you'll discover that the right people are your most valuable asset. They open doors, watch your back, and push you to grow. They help you maintain your vision when you falter, and remind you of who you are when you doubt. Just as money needs time to grow, relationships need nurturing to flourish. Invest them with attention, listening, and honesty. And you'll see that those investments will pay off far greater than any stock or property. The true secret to wealth is not just how much money you accumulate, but who you share it with, who you build it with, and who accompanies you along the way. Solitary success is empty, but shared success is abundant. Therefore, the higher you want to go, the more careful you must be with the people you bring along on your journey. Evaluate your relationships as investments, guard your reputation as the most valuable asset you have, and always surround yourself with people better than you. That will be one of the most profitable decisions of your life. Chapter number 7. Career and Business. In building a life of wealth and freedom, career and business are two paths that, although distinct, intertwine at one essential point: your ability to make strategic decisions that enhance your talent and multiply your market value. Most people choose a job out of immediate need, for a paycheck at the end of the month, without pausing to consider whether that position aligns with their skills, their passions, or their purpose. However, those who excel financially understand that a job is not simply a place where you exchange hours for money, but a training ground, a springboard, and, often, the first major investment of your life. Choosing a job that enhances your talent is much more than receiving a paycheck. It's investing in yourself, your learning, and your future. When you accept a job that challenges your abilities, that forces you to learn, to grow, to develop new skills, you are investing in the most valuable asset of all: your mind. The knowledge you acquire, the experiences you accumulate, and the skills you hone become your true capital. That capital, unlike money, cannot be stolen or devalued. Every time you learn something new, every time you solve a complex problem or develop a skill that few others possess, you increase your market value. So, when evaluating a job opportunity, don't just think about the starting salary. Think about what that position will do for you in 5 or 10 years. Ask yourself, is it preparing me for a bigger future, or is it simply paying me to survive? Warren Buffett put it best: choose a job you do even if you weren't paid, because the passion and commitment you bring to your work will determine how much you grow there. Buffett also always emphasized the importance of working with people you admire, because it's in those environments that you grow the fastest. A boss who inspires, a mentor who guides, a team that demands your best, all of these become incubators for your potential. Working in a place where your talent flourishes can mean the difference between staying stuck on a fixed salary or opening up to unimaginable opportunities. Now, Buffett also had a very particular vision of business. He always looked for simple, easy-to-understand businesses with clear and solid fundamentals. In his philosophy, you don't need to chase complex technology companies or enter sectors you don't understand. What you need is clarity. A business that sells something that people understand, need, and will continue to need over time. Think of examples like Coca-Cola or American Express. They're not fancy businesses, but they're built on solid foundations and consumer trust. That's the essence of lasting businesses: simplicity, clarity, and usefulness. Many entrepreneurs fail because they are seduced by what's new, what seems revolutionary, and the latest fads. They invest time and money in projects they don't fully understand and end up losing everything. Buffett constantly repeated that he would never invest in a business he didn't understand, and you should apply the same rule to both investing and entrepreneurship. You don't need to reinvent the wheel or create the next big tech unicorn. You need to identify what you know how to do, what people need, and how you can solve it consistently and profitably. That's the formula for simple yet successful businesses. Starting a business with financial intelligence means not letting emotion get the better of you without rational analysis. Many dream of being entrepreneurs, but they confuse entrepreneurship with improvisation. A successful business requires planning, clarity in the numbers, discipline in execution, and a long-term vision. It means understanding revenue streams, costs, margins, the market, and above all, it means having a safety cushion to withstand the inevitable tough times. Great entrepreneurs aren't those who never fail, but those who structure their businesses so they can bounce back after each fall. Buffett said that a good business must be able to survive even if run by an average person, because its strength lies in the model, not in a brilliant person holding it up. This teaches us that success doesn't depend solely on individual effort, but on building systems and structures that work even when you're not there. If your business depends 100% on you, it's not a business. It's simply a job in disguise. True entrepreneurship seeks to generate value autonomously, to have money work for you even when you sleep, to have your systems produce income regardless of your constant presence. At the same time, entrepreneurship requires courage. It requires a willingness to take calculated risks, to leave the comfort of a fixed salary and face uncertainty. But that risk, when taken with financial intelligence, becomes the seed of your freedom. The difference between a successful entrepreneur and a failed one lies in how they manage that risk. The former studies, analyzes, measures, prepares, and moves forward with a plan. The latter simply jumps in without a safety net, trusting that things will turn out well. And while luck may play a role, in the long run, it's preparation and discipline that determine who stays. Your career and your business are a reflection of how you understand value. If you only pursue quick money, you'll likely end up trapped in schemes that crumble over time. But if you seek to build on solid foundations, with patience and consistency, what you achieve will last. And remember, the goal isn't to work your whole life on something you don't enjoy, nor is it to start a business just to escape a boss. The goal is to create a path where your talent, your passion, and your financial intelligence come together to give you freedom and meaning. In the end, wealth doesn't come solely from how much you earn, but from how you turn your career or business into a vehicle for personal and financial growth. Choosing a job that enhances your talent is planting the seed. Understanding the simple business vision is caring for the soil where it grows. And starting a business with financial intelligence is watering that tree with discipline and patience. Over time, the tree will bear abundant fruit that you and future generations can enjoy. Chapter number 8. The importance of saying no. One of Warren Buffett's less discussed but most powerful secrets isn't a mathematical formula or an investment trick, but his ability to say no. It may seem like a minor, almost insignificant detail, but it's actually one of the most profitable skills anyone can develop. Most people live trapped in the trap of wanting to please, of accepting every invitation, every project, every commitment, out of fear of missing an opportunity or because they don't know how to set clear boundaries. However, this attitude is the enemy of productivity, growth, and long-term wealth. Buffett understood this from a very young age. Every yes you say is a slice of your time, energy, and attention that you'll never get back. Time, unlike money, is a resource that cannot be multiplied. You can lose money and recover it with effort, work, or a good investment, but not even the richest man in the world can buy a single minute of extra life. That's why Buffett always protected his time as if it were his most valuable asset. While many imagine him in constant meetings, traveling from one country to another, or locked away in luxurious offices, the reality is that Buffett spends much of his time reading, thinking, and making calm decisions. Why? Because he knows that his success doesn't depend on being everywhere, but on focusing on a few right decisions. Saying no is, in essence, an act of focus. It means recognizing that you can't do everything, that your energy is limited, and that you must invest it in what truly matters. Buffett has rejected more opportunities than he has accepted, and that is precisely why the few he made him immensely wealthy. His philosophy is clear. You don't need 500 brilliant decisions in life. A few are enough, but they must be the right ones. To reach those decisions, you need mental space, you need calm, You need the ability to say no to everything that doesn't fit into your strategy. The problem is that many distractions disguise themselves as opportunities. They offer you projects that sound attractive, meetings that seem important, deals that promise quick profits, and in the midst of the excitement, you can fall into the trap of committing to something that doesn't add real value. Every yes you say to something irrelevant is a no you say to what really matters. It's like watering weeds instead of watering the seeds in your own garden. Buffett knew how to rigorously filter. Do I understand this business? Is it aligned with my philosophy? Does it make sense long term? If the answer was no, no matter how tempting the proposal, he simply said no. The power of that word lies not in the rejection itself, but in what it protects, your ability to focus. When you commit to too many things, your energy is diluted and your results are fragmented. But when you focus your attention on a handful of key activities, the results multiply. It's the difference between scattering a flashlight in a dark room or concentrating it into a laser beam capable of cutting through metal. The same principle applies to your life and your finances. The more focused you are on the essentials, the more profound your impact will be. Saying no also requires courage, because we live in a world that rewards hyperactivity and the appearance of always being busy. We are led to believe that having a full schedule is synonymous with success, when in reality it is often a sign of a lack of clear priorities. Buffett, on the other hand, always kept a surprisingly clear schedule. His calendar had very few commitments, and that allowed him to devote long hours to what truly mattered: analyzing investments, reading reports, reflecting, and, above all, thinking. This time for reflection, jealously guarded by his ability to say no, was the fertile ground for the decisions that made him a financial legend. Now, it's not just about saying no to others. It's also about saying no to yourself. Refusing to fall into the trap of impulsive spending, the temptation to invest in things you don't understand, the desire to impress others with empty luxuries. Every time you choose discipline over impulse, you're saying no to immediate gratification in order to say yes to a greater future. That capacity for self-control, for prioritizing what matters over what shines momentarily, is the true foundation of financial success. The power of focus not only translates to business and investments, it also reflects in your personal life. People who lead the most fulfilling lives aren't those who do a little bit of everything, but those who identify what's essential and cultivate it with devotion. These may be few friendships, but deep ones. These may be few activities, but meaningful ones. These may be few projects, but impactful ones. By reducing dispersion, you increase the quality of your experience and also the magnitude of your results. Buffett once summed it up by saying that the difference between successful people and very successful people is that the latter say no almost all the time. In that almost all the time lies a golden secret. If you don't learn to protect your time, others will waste it for you. If you don't learn to filter opportunities, you'll fill yourself with irrelevant commitments. And if you don't learn to say no, you'll end up living other people's agendas and dreams instead of your own. So, as you look at your financial life, your career, and your relationships, ask yourself, what distractions am I accepting that keep me from my true goals? How many times do I say yes only out of fear of disappointing others? How much of my energy is wasted on commitments that don't bring me closer to the life I want? Whenever you have doubts, remember Buffett's lesson. Wealth, clarity, and peace of mind are built with every no you say to the irrelevant and every yes you reserve for the essential. Part 4. Philosophy of Life and Wealth. Chapter number 9. Mistakes that destroy fortunes. Most people fail at building wealth not because of a lack of intelligence or opportunity, but because they repeatedly make mistakes that seem small at first, but over time become giant pitfalls that destroy any fortune. No matter how much money you manage to earn, if you don't know how to protect it from these silent enemies, it will evaporate through your fingers like water. Warren Buffett repeats it constantly. Building wealth is a slow, patient, and disciplined process, but losing it can happen in a matter of seconds. That's why understanding and avoiding the most common mistakes is almost as important as learning how to invest. The first of these mistakes, perhaps the most lethal, is unnecessary debt. Debt, when used intelligently to build productive assets, can be a powerful tool, but most people don't use it with that vision. Instead of borrowing to acquire income-generating assets, they borrow to buy luxuries, indulgences, or things that lose value as soon as they leave the store. Credit cards with exorbitant interest rates, personal loans for vacations, car financing beyond their realistic ability to pay. All of this becomes an invisible chain that imprisons millions of people for decades. Buffett was blunt in his advice. Never get into debt you can't control, because even a brilliant investment turns into a disaster if you burden it with unaffordable interest. The second devastating mistake is spending for show. The desire to show off a lifestyle that doesn't yet match financial reality is one of the most common traps. Buying luxury clothes, the latest phone model, a more expensive car than you can afford, constantly dining at expensive restaurants, all to impress others who often aren't even paying attention. This desire to appear successful is precisely what keeps people from achieving it. Buffett has been a living example of the opposite. Despite being one of the richest men on the planet, he lives in the same house in Omaha that he bought in 1958, drives simple cars, and avoids unnecessary luxuries. He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone because he understands that real wealth is measured in freedom and peace of mind, not in the opinions of others. The irony is that most people who try to pretend end up enslaved by that appearance. They go into debt to sustain a lifestyle they can't really afford, mortgage their future for a present filled with masks, and sacrifice their peace of mind for the fleeting validation of others. It's a vicious cycle. The more you pretend, the more you spend. The more you spend, the more you go into debt. The more you go into debt, the further you are from financial freedom. The only way to break it is with humility, discipline, and the courage to live in accordance with your reality, while silently working to improve it. The third mistake, perhaps the most treacherous, is making emotional decisions. Money has the ability to arouse intense emotions in us. Fear, greed, euphoria, anxiety. And when we let those emotions guide our decisions, the results are often catastrophic. In financial markets, for example, people buy when prices rise for fear of missing out and sell when they fall for fear of losing more. It's irrational behavior that is repeated over and over again, despite Buffett's clear warnings. Be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. Making decisions based on emotion is the opposite of financial wisdom. An investment that seemed brilliant in the midst of euphoria can turn into a devastating loss when reality hits. A business that seemed secure in the midst of excitement can collapse because the risks weren't analyzed carefully. Even in your personal life, an impulsive purchase made out of anxiety or the need for immediate gratification can throw your finances off balance for months. Buffett insists that the key is to keep a cool head, even when the whole world is on fire. It's not about ignoring emotions, but about recognizing them and learning not to blindly obey them. Avoiding these three mistakes not only protects your money, it also strengthens your character. It requires discipline to resist the temptation to go into debt on a whim, humility to avoid spending on appearance, and mental strength to avoid being swayed by emotions. Every time you manage to do this, you are building not only financial wealth, but a true wealth mindset, one that is based on solid principles rather than fleeting illusions. Buffett, through his life and decisions, reminds us that the secret isn't in doing everything perfectly, but in avoiding catastrophe. You can make mistakes in small details, but if you stay away from the errors that destroy fortunes, time and compound interest will do the rest for you. That's the big lesson. You don't need to be a financial genius to build wealth, but you do need the practical intelligence to avoid sabotaging yourself with unnecessary debt, empty pretenses, or emotional decisions. In the end, building wealth isn't just a matter of earning more, but also protecting what you already have. History is full of examples of people who made gigantic fortunes and lost them by falling into these traps. The difference between those who manage to keep and multiply their money and those who lose it lies in the ability to avoid the obvious. Just as a captain doesn't need to control every wave, but does need to avoid the most dangerous reefs, you don't need to always get every investment right. Just steer clear of the mistakes that can sink you. True financial freedom isn't about accumulating wealth to impress, taking emotional risks, or living trapped in debt. It's about the peace of mind that comes from knowing your money works for you, that you're living according to your values, and that your decisions are based on solid principles, not fleeting emotions. Avoiding the mistakes that destroy fortunes is like fortifying your ship before setting sail. It doesn't guarantee you'll always sail with a fair wind, but it does ensure you'll have the strength to weather the storms and reach your destination. Chapter number 10. Wealth beyond money. When we talk about wealth, most people think only of numbers, bank accounts, properties, and assets. However, true wealth transcends money. Buffett, despite being one of the richest men in the world, has repeatedly stated that health, time, and family are the most valuable assets anyone can have. You can have billions of dollars, but if your body isn't responding, if your days are hijacked by obligations you hate, or if your home environment is broken, that money loses all meaning. Money can buy you comfort, but it can't buy you quality time, genuine affection, or lasting well-being. Health is the first pillar of this deeper wealth. Buffett often says that if he could buy a new body, he would invest his entire fortune in it, because he understands that having millions is pointless if you can't wake up with the energy to enjoy them. Many people sacrifice their physical and mental well-being in pursuit of money, working endless hours, eating poorly, ignoring rest, and when they finally reach a certain level of success, their bodies no longer respond. That's a cruel irony, spending your life accumulating, only to then spend what you've accumulated trying to regain lost health. True wisdom lies in nurturing that asset from the start, because without it, all other achievements become meaningless. Time is the second essential asset. Buffett protects his time with an almost obsessive discipline. His schedule is surprisingly empty compared to that of other entrepreneurs or celebrities. He understands that time is the only resource that never comes back. You can lose money and get it back, but every minute gone is unrecoverable. That's why he says no to most proposals he receives, even million-dollar opportunities. He prefers to spend his days doing what he's passionate about, such as reading for hours, playing bridge with friends, or spending time with his family. That's a powerful lesson. Wealth isn't in filling your days with commitments, but in being able to choose what to do with them. Family, for its part, represents emotional wealth. Buffett has said that at the end of life, the true measure of success is whether the people you love truly love you. No amount of money can replace a sincere hug, a conversation with a child, or the connection with a partner who accompanies you along the way. Many people sacrifice these ties in the race for financial success and then discover too late that what they left behind was the most valuable. Building authentic wealth means investing time and attention in those you love, because they are the ones who give meaning to the rest of your achievements. Integrity is also part of this wealth beyond money. Buffett has been relentless in his message. You can lose money and recover it, but if you lose your reputation, you're finished. Living with integrity not only generates trust in business, it also builds an inner peace that money can't buy. Those who act honestly can sleep soundly, those who are guided by solid principles build lasting relationships, and those who keep their word leave a legacy that transcends generations. Money buys things. Integrity, on the other hand, buys respect and admiration. Buffett's austerity is another reflection of this vision. He has lived in the same modest house in Omaha for decades, drives simple cars, enjoys cheap breakfasts at fast food chains, and feels no need to surround himself with extravagant luxuries. His lifestyle is not the result of stinginess, but of clarity. He understands that true wealth is not measured by how much you spend, but by how much freedom you have. And freedom comes when you are not a slave to maintaining a facade, when your expenses are less than your income, and when you don't need to prove anything to anyone. This austere lifestyle has allowed him to focus on what truly matters: reading, thinking, making decisions calmly, sharing with those he cares about. That is the essence of wealth, not filling your life with things, but emptying it of distractions. In a society obsessed with display, Buffett reminds us of the value of simplicity, having less, but enjoying more, owning less, but living more fully. In the end, what matters is not the quantity of accumulated possessions, but the quality of the experiences lived. Building wealth beyond money also means understanding that money is a means, not an end. It's a tool that can give you peace of mind, options, and security, but it doesn't replace the deepest sources of well-being. Those who confuse wealth with accumulation end up trapped in an endless race, always chasing more and more, without stopping to enjoy. Buffett, on the other hand, has shown that true abundance is balance. Having enough to live well, but also the wisdom to value the intangible. And finally, wealth beyond money is reflected in legacy. What do you leave behind when you're gone? It's not about numbers in a bank, but about the footprints you've left on others. Buffett has decided to donate the majority of his fortune to philanthropic causes, not because he despises money, but because he understands that its greatest value lies in the impact it can have on the lives of millions. The same applies on a personal level. Your legacy lies in the values you pass on to your family, in the opportunities you create for others, in the way your life inspires those around you. Thus, wealth beyond money isn't measured in balance sheets or property titles. It's measured in health, time, family, integrity, and the freedom to live according to your principles. Buffett reminds us that accumulating money without these foundations is like building a castle in the sand. It may seem impressive, but it's groundless. True wealth, the wealth that remains when all material things disappear, lies in who you are, not just in what you have. Chapter number 11. Humility and Continuous Learning. One of Warren Buffett's most admirable traits is not only his ability to generate wealth, but the way he never stopped learning, regardless of his age or achievements. One might think that, after becoming one of the most successful investors of all time, with an incalculable fortune and worldwide recognition, he would have succumbed to the arrogance of believing he already knew it all. However, the exact opposite is true. Buffett defines himself as an eternal learner. His life is a reminder that humility and continuous learning are not only desirable qualities, but necessary conditions for growing and staying relevant in a world that never stops changing. Buffett spends most of his time reading. In his Omaha office, his routine consists of spending hours immersed in books, reports, newspapers, and documents. He feels no urgency to act hastily or fill his schedule with meetings. He himself has said on multiple occasions, much of his success is due to spending more time reading and thinking than actually executing. This ability to pause and reflect allows him to make decisions with greater clarity, without being swept away by emotions or the fads of the moment. While others desperately run after the next big opportunity, Buffett sits back to observe, to study, to understand. And when he acts, he does so with conviction, because his decision is backed by hours of silent analysis. This seemingly simple practice holds a profound lesson. We live in a world that glorifies immediate action, speed, and constant doing, as if productivity were measured solely in movement. But Buffett demonstrates that true productivity also lies in pause, in contemplation, in preparation. It's not about doing more, but about doing better. And to do better, you need to continually learn. Continuous learning isn't just a technical matter. It's not limited to reading financial statements or investment manuals. It's also a human learning process, a genuine interest in understanding people, analyzing patterns of behavior, and observing how society evolves. Buffett has demonstrated inexhaustible intellectual curiosity. He reads about history, psychology, biographies, politics, economics, and virtually any topic that can enrich his perspective. This breadth of knowledge allows him to connect ideas that others wouldn't see and anticipate movements that are invisible to most. Humility plays a key role in this process. To truly learn, it's necessary to accept that one doesn't know everything. Buffett recognizes his limitations and isn't afraid to admit mistakes. In fact, he has invested in companies that didn't perform as he expected and has publicly acknowledged those errors. This sincerity doesn't weaken him. On the contrary, it strengthens him, because it shows that even the wisest person can make mistakes, and that true value lies not in pretending to be infallible, but in learning from every stumble. This attitude of perpetual learning prevents him from becoming stuck in arrogance and keeps him always moving, growing, and evolving. The power of intellectual curiosity is another fundamental aspect of his life. He doesn't limit himself to his professional field, but rather seeks to learn for the simple pleasure of doing so. That curiosity is the driving force that keeps him active, awake, and vibrant. Many people, upon reaching a certain age or stability, become complacent, close to learning, and believe they've seen it all. Buffett, on the other hand, with more than 9 decades of life under his belt, continues to explore, continues to question, continues to discover. This attitude not only makes him a better investor, but also a more fulfilled person with a wealth of experience. His example reminds us that humility doesn't consist of putting ourselves down or denying our own achievements, but rather in being open enough to understand that there's always something new to learn, someone to learn a lesson from, an idea that can transform the way we see the world. Humility is the key that unlocks the door to continuous knowledge. And knowledge, when properly cultivated, is the tool that allows us to make better decisions and live more wisely. Buffett also insists on the importance of learning from others. Throughout his life, he has sought out mentors, colleagues, and partners from whom he can absorb lessons. His relationship with Charlie Munger, his inseparable partner, is a clear example of this. The two complement each other, discuss, challenge, and mutually enrich each other. Buffett has never claimed to be the sole owner of the truth, but rather has known how to surround himself with people who force him to think more deeply and question himself. This is another powerful lesson. Learning is not always a solitary act. it is also a shared process. Reading more than you act, thinking before deciding, maintaining your curiosity, embracing mistakes as lessons, and surrounding yourself with those who inspire you. All of this constitutes the essence of lifelong learning. And the most extraordinary thing is that it's not a habit reserved for geniuses or millionaires. Anyone can cultivate the discipline of reading daily, of observing the world through the eyes of a learner, of putting aside their ego to recognize what they don't know. The difference lies in the perseverance and attitude with which they approach this process. Ultimately, humility and continuous learning are the driving forces that keep the capacity for growth alive. Money can multiply, but if there is no personal growth, that money ends up emptying itself of meaning. Buffett shows us that true greatness lies in continuing to learn, in never losing the capacity for wonder, in living as if every day were an opportunity to discover something new. This is the attitude that keeps him relevant decades later. This is the seed we can cultivate in our own lives. Because whoever stops learning stops growing, and whoever stops growing begins to die in life. On the other hand, whoever maintains the humility to learn will always have an open horizon, full of infinite possibilities. Part 5. Your New Path to Freedom. Chapter number 12. A Lifelong Financial Plan. To talk about a lifelong financial plan is to talk about vision, commitment, and discipline. It's not a temporary strategy or a series of improvised tactics, but a roadmap that accompanies a person from the moment they begin earning income until their later years. Designing a wealth plan doesn't simply mean accumulating money for the sake of accumulating it, but rather building a system that allows you to enjoy stability, security, and freedom over time. For Warren Buffett, wealth is not the result of a stroke of luck or a magical opportunity, but rather a series of coherent decisions made with patience and consistency. This philosophy can be applied to the life of anyone willing to organize their finances with a long-term mindset. The first step in that plan is to have absolute clarity about your relationship with money. Most people don't have a financial plan because they've never stopped to reflect on what they want to achieve with the money that comes into their pockets. They earn, spend, and survive from month to month, without setting goals, without projecting scenarios, without measuring consequences. A wealth plan begins with fundamental questions. What does financial freedom mean to me? What kind of life do I want to have in 10, 20, or 30 years? What do I want my retirement to look like? What legacy do I want to leave for my family? The answers to these questions are what shape the plan, because without a clear purpose, money becomes a stream that flows aimlessly and, sooner or later, dissolves without a trace. Designing a lifelong financial plan also involves learning to divide time into stages. The money of a 20-year-old just starting out in their career is not managed the same way as that of a 40-year-old looking to consolidate their wealth, or that of a 60-year-old preparing to live off the accumulated wealth. Each stage has different rules, but they all share universal principles. Save consistently, invest wisely, and reinvest profits to accelerate growth. Buffett would summarize it simply: let your money work harder than you do. Saving, although it may seem like a modest word, is the foundation of every financial plan. Without saving, there is no possible investment, and without investment, there is no multiplication of capital. Saving doesn't mean depriving yourself of life, but rather learning to differentiate between what is essential and what is accessory. Disciplined saving depends not so much on how much you earn, but on how much you save. A person who earns a lot and spends it all will never have freedom. On the other hand, someone who earns less but saves and invests consistently can build a fortune over the long term. Buffett himself has set an example. Despite his immense wealth, he has always lived below his means and reinvested much of his income instead of spending it on unnecessary luxuries. Investing is the second pillar. This is where money becomes a silent worker, generating additional income while you sleep. Investing doesn't mean guessing which stock will rise tomorrow or chasing the latest fad. Investing is studying, analyzing, understanding, and investing capital in vehicles that offer security, growth, and sustainability over time. Buffett insists that the ideal is to invest in what you understand. That's the key. Never risk money on something you don't understand. A solid financial plan isn't based on gambles or hunches, but on clear fundamentals. It could be stocks in companies with simple and stable business models, real estate in areas with growth potential, or financial instruments that guarantee moderate but secure returns. The idea isn't speed, but consistency. Reinvesting is the third pillar, and this is where the magic of compound interest comes into play. Earning money and spending it immediately breaks the growth cycle. But earning, reinvesting, and earning again multiplies capital exponentially. Buffett calls it the eighth wonder of the world because it allows small amounts to become large sums if given enough time to grow. Therefore, in a life plan, each profit should be treated like a seed. Some can be enjoyed, but the majority must return to the earth to generate new crops. A lifelong financial plan also requires practical, easy-to-follow rules that work even when emotion or temptation tries to lead us astray. One of those rules is never to spend money you don't yet have. Avoiding consumer debt is essential, because adverse interest rates act like an acid that dissolves wealth. Another rule is to diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversification doesn't mean aimlessly scattering money, but rather intelligently distributing capital across different assets to reduce risk. Another key rule is to always maintain an emergency fund, having liquidity to deal with unforeseen events without having to go into debt or dismantle long-term investments. In addition to these rules, it's vital to learn to periodically review and adjust your plan. The world changes, the economy changes, and personal lives change too. What worked in your 20s may not be enough in your 40s. Therefore, from time to time, it's necessary to evaluate your course, analyze results, and make adjustments. Flexibility doesn't mean abandoning your principles, but rather adapting them to new circumstances. Buffett does this continually. While maintaining his core philosophy of value investing, he constantly reviews trends, industries, and opportunities that align with his principles, even if they belong to different contexts. A fundamental aspect that shouldn't be overlooked is mindset. A financial plan isn't just a matter of numbers, but of character. It requires patience to wait for results, discipline to avoid the temptation of immediate spending, humility to keep learning, and strength to avoid being swayed by emotions when the market rises or falls. Buffett has shown that financial success depends not so much on IQ as on emotional stability. Having a plan is easy. Executing it day after day for decades is the truly challenging part, and that requires a mind trained in perseverance. A lifelong financial plan isn't a straitjacket, but an ally that provides direction and security. Knowing that there's a clear strategy generates peace of mind, even in the midst of crises. Because crises will come, recessions, market crashes, personal unforeseen events. But a well-designed plan acts as a shield that protects and a map that guides. That's true wealth. Not just accumulating money, but having the confidence that, no matter what happens, there's a solid path that sustains us. In the end, the greatest value of a financial plan isn't the money it accumulates, but the freedom it provides. The freedom to decide how to use your time, to dedicate more hours to what matters, to not live enslaved by debt or a job you don't love. That freedom is built day by day, with small, consistent decisions, simple habits, and a long-term vision. Buffett is living proof of this. His austere lifestyle, his philosophy of constant reinvestment, and his iron discipline have allowed him not only to accumulate one of the largest fortunes on the planet, but also to enjoy it with serenity and purpose. Designing a wealth plan isn't a luxury for a select few. It's a necessity for all who wish to live with peace of mind and security. It's not about how much you earn, but how you manage what you have. Saving, investing, and reinvesting are the three cogs in a machine that, over time, builds freedom. The most powerful rule of thumb is to start today, even with a little, because the most valuable thing in the world of finance isn't the initial money, but the time it's given to grow. And time, once lost, never returns. Therefore, the wisest decision is to start now, design the plan, commit to it, and let the future, little by little, be built on a firm and solid foundation. Chapter number 13. How to protect your money in times of crisis. Protecting your money in times of crisis is one of the most important tasks any financially savvy person must learn. Crises are not rare economic anomalies, but inevitable parts of the cycle. What goes up, sooner or later comes down. Markets, like the seasons, go through winters and springs, and those who don't prepare for winter are exposed to the relentless cold. Warren Buffett has experienced several crises throughout his career, from stock market crashes to global recessions, and each one has left valuable lessons that show how to protect and multiply wealth when most others give in to panic. The first principle for protecting your money in difficult times is to accept that volatility is a natural part of the game. Many investors are surprised when the market goes down, as if it were a mistake or an unexpected catastrophe. But the reality is that declines are as normal as rises. Buffett often says that you can't expect markets to always be sunny. There are storms, and the key is learning to navigate through the rain without sinking. Understanding this reduces anxiety and helps you make more rational decisions when most lose their cool. During a bear market, investor psychology becomes an investor's greatest enemy. Fear leads to selling what should be held, and greed leads to buying what should never have been acquired. Buffett teaches that, in moments of panic, people behave irrationally. They sell at low prices what are actually solid assets, or they stand still while opportunities pass before their eyes. Shielding your money means, above all, shielding your mind. Having the serenity not to be swayed by the noise or the alarmist headlines, and staying the course even when everything around you seems to be crumbling. One of Buffett's most powerful strategies in times of crisis is maintaining liquidity. Having cash available when everyone else is selling at a discount is like having oxygen in the middle of a fire. Cash becomes a weapon that allows you to buy quality assets at discounted prices. This is a lesson many forget. A crisis isn't just a risk, it's also an opportunity. Those who arrive prepared with cash can acquire what others, desperately, are selling off. Thus, while some lose, others sow the seeds of their future wealth. Another key lesson is to avoid excessive debt. Crises hit those burdened with debt particularly hard. When income declines and payments remain the same, the weight of debt becomes a chain that drags you down. Buffett has always avoided unnecessary debt, especially short-term debt, because he knows that in times of uncertainty, flexibility is the most valuable asset. Protecting your finances means reducing obligations and building a safety margin that will allow you to endure even if things get very bad for months or years. Preparation also includes smart diversification. It's not about investing in everything out of fear, but rather about distributing assets across different areas so that if one sector suffers, others can withstand it. Buffett sums it up by investing in businesses with simple, essential models. Companies that produce goods or services that people will continue to need even in a recession. Food, healthcare, energy, and consumer staples. These sectors have a greater capacity to sustain themselves in times of turbulence, and therefore better protect capital. Beyond the technical aspects, there's a fundamental emotional aspect, learning to think in decades, not weeks. Those who view a market crash as an immediate tragedy lose sight of the fact that history shows that, over the long term, markets always recover and surpass previous levels. Buffett constantly reminds us that if you're not willing to hold an investment for at least 10 years, then you shouldn't even buy it for 10 minutes. Shielding your money means adopting that patient mindset that understands that crises are parentheses, not definitive endings. Preparing for the unexpected also requires accepting that not everything can be foreseen. There will be events that no one anticipated: pandemics, wars, regulatory changes, disruptive innovations. The mistake isn't in failing to predict them, but in not being prepared to withstand their impact. This is where the importance of an emergency fund, adequate insurance, and flexibility in your financial plan come in. Having reserves to cover months of expenses, having protection against serious risks, and maintaining investments that don't depend on a single source of income are concrete ways to create a shield against the unexpected. In the midst of crises, Buffett often repeats a phrase that reflects his philosophy: be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. Protecting your money doesn't mean hiding it under the mattress, but rather daring to act when others are paralyzed. The secret lies in differentiating between irrational fear and real risk. Irrational fear causes people to abandon valuable assets without justification, and that's where opportunity arises. Real risk, on the other hand, lies in investing in things that have no future, even if they're cheap. Wisdom lies in recognizing this difference, and this requires study, analysis, and calm. Financial protection also depends on lifestyle. A simple and austere life provides greater resilience in turbulent times. Those who spend at the limit of their income suffer with any reduction. Those who live below their means, on the other hand, can adapt without major sacrifices. Buffett exemplifies this philosophy. His modest lifestyle gave him the leeway to navigate crises without compromising his personal finances. In practice, this means avoiding excessive fixed expenses, cultivating the habit of saving, and always maintaining room for maneuver in the budget. Ultimately, protecting your finances in times of crisis is, above all, an exercise in trusting your long-term vision. It's not about denying difficulties or ignoring real problems, but rather facing them with preparation, serenity, and strategy. Crises will pass, as they always have. Those who survive are not the strongest or the fastest, but the most adaptable. Those who have built a solid plan, those who have reserves, diversification, and emotional discipline, will be able to weather any storm without losing their way. And they will not only emerge unscathed, but will likely emerge stronger, because they will have taken advantage of opportunities that only appear when everything seems to be falling apart. Thus, the true protection lies not in fearing crises, but in learning to see them as a natural part of financial life. With preparation, patience, and vision, each crisis can be transformed into a stepping stone toward more solid freedom. Buffett has proven this time and again. Lasting wealth is not built by avoiding storms, but by knowing how to navigate them with a firm rudder and a clear strategy. Part 6. The Legacy of Warren Buffett. Chapter number 14. Sharing the Wealth and Leaving a Mark. Accumulating wealth alone is not the ultimate goal for a true fortune builder. Having money, multiplying it, and managing it wisely are important steps, but transcendence comes when that wealth transforms into something greater than oneself. Warren Buffett has demonstrated that philanthropy is a higher purpose, an act that turns the fruits of financial intelligence into a legacy that can change lives and transform societies. It's not simply about donating money out of moral obligation, but about recognizing that, at a certain point, material things lose relevance compared to the impact we can leave on the world. Buffett always maintained that leaving large inheritances to children was not the most responsible way to use wealth. He believes the best thing to give one's offspring is an education, values, and an environment that fosters independence, not excessive fortunes that lead to complacency. Under this philosophy, he pledged to donate more than 99% of his wealth to charitable causes, understanding that his money can have a much more powerful impact if it is used to solve humanity's problems rather than sitting idle in bank accounts or in the hands of heirs without real need. That commitment materialized in the famous philanthropic promise known as the Giving Pledge, an initiative he promoted with Bill and Melinda Gates. Through it, dozens of billionaires from around the world pledged to donate the majority of their fortune during their lifetime or after their death. Buffett, far from boasting, presents it as a natural responsibility. If you're part of the luckiest 1% of humanity, you owe something to the other 99%. His words are not empty rhetoric, but a reminder that wealth with a purpose acquires a value that goes beyond any number. True legacy isn't measured in accumulated dollars, but in the impact generated. Buffett knows this and acts accordingly. His life shows that one can enjoy a successful career, live frugally, and at the same time commit one's resources to causes that transcend generations. Philanthropy doesn't make him a hero, but rather someone aware that wealth without a positive impact ends up being a fruitless accumulation. This is where the deepest meaning of building wealth is revealed, having the means to leave a mark that inspires and alleviates need. Sharing wealth doesn't just mean making large, multi-million-dollar donations. For most people, it can involve simpler but equally meaningful acts. It might mean supporting the local community, funding the education of someone who wouldn't otherwise have access to it, helping a family member start a business, or allocating part of the profits to projects that improve the lives of others. The principle is the same. Money becomes a channel for multiplying well-being, not just for increasing possessions. Making a difference means looking beyond one's own benefit and recognizing that every action, no matter how small, can sow a seed in someone else's life. A true legacy isn't built on the magnitude of what is given, but on the intention with which it is shared. Buffett teaches us that living with integrity and consistency, continually learning, investing patiently, and ultimately giving back to society are steps that complete the cycle of complete wealth. Because in the end, bills and banknotes don't cross the border of life with us. All that remains is what we accomplished for others and the example we left behind for those around us. Building a legacy also means inspiring by example. Buffett, with his modest lifestyle, his transparent decisions, and his commitment to sharing his fortune, has conveyed a clear message. One can be immensely rich and at the same time profoundly humble. This combination of financial wisdom and humanity is perhaps the most powerful legacy he leaves behind, beyond any million-dollar check. It reminds us that being rich isn't just about accumulating wealth, but also about giving, serving, and building a world a little better than we found it. Those who understand this discover that wealth is only a means, never an end. It is enjoyed, invested, multiplied, but ultimately it finds meaning when it is shared. Leaving a mark means understanding that life is not measured only by what we achieve for ourselves, but by what we were able to inspire in others. Buffett sums it up eloquently. In the end, What matters is whether the people you love you back. A phrase that reminds us that, although money is important, true wealth is found in relationships, in contributions, and in the legacy that transcends individual existence. Thus, sharing wealth isn't about losing, but about winning in the most essential way. It's about ensuring that our journey through the world resonates beyond our own lifetime. It's about sowing today what others will reap tomorrow. And in that act, perhaps, lies the purest definition of success, having built a wealth that not only enriches accounts, but also enriches lives. Conclusion. From theory to action. Reaching this point doesn't mean the end of a journey, but rather the true beginning of a new reality. We've explored Warren Buffett's most powerful teachings, not as a simple biography, but as a practical guide to transforming our relationship with money, with people, and ultimately, with our entire lives. The synthesis of what we've learned shows us that wealth isn't built with magic formulas or shortcuts full of empty promises, but with patience, discipline, independent thinking, and an unwavering commitment to integrity. The first great lesson is understanding the power of compounding. Every dollar saved and invested wisely has the potential to turn into hundreds or thousands in the future. It's not about making huge bets, but rather allowing time and perseverance to do their silent but unstoppable work. The second lesson is the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people, those whose integrity and reputation strengthen yours, those who inspire you to grow and live with higher standards. Buffett always says it's better to be surrounded by people better than you, because they will inevitably pull you up. The third lesson is the need to choose a job or business that not only provides income but also leverages your talent and passion. Earning money is important, but enjoying what you do and contributing value to the world is what gives it lasting meaning. Added to this is the ability to say no, to protect your time, and to avoid distractions disguised as opportunities. Buffett is a living example of how radical focus produces extraordinary results. We also learn that the most costly mistakes don't originate in the markets, but within ourselves. Unnecessary debt, the desire for appearances, the inability to control emotions. True wealth requires mental and emotional discipline. In that process, we discovered that money is only part of the equation. Health, time, family, and reputation are far more valuable assets, and without them, any fortune is fragile. Another vital lesson is humility and continuous learning. Buffett, despite his success, remains a voracious reader, someone who spends most of his days learning and reflecting more than he does. Intellectual curiosity and a willingness to constantly improve are driving forces that keep progress alive. Similarly, designing a lifelong financial plan becomes a compass that provides direction and clarity. Save, invest, reinvest, and maintain practical rules that keep us strong in the face of uncertainty. And speaking of uncertainty, we can't forget that crises are inevitable. Markets will rise and fall, economies will face turbulence, and investor psychology will be tested time and again. The difference between losing everything and emerging stronger lies in preparation, long-term vision, and the serenity to act when others lose their minds. Buffett taught us that true financial courage isn't chasing fads, but standing firm on the essentials when everything seems to be crumbling. Finally, we understood that wealth is at its best when it's shared. Philanthropy isn't an act reserved for billionaires, but a universal principle. Give to multiply, contribute to leave a mark, invest in lives and communities that might otherwise lack opportunities. Buffett reminds us that true legacy isn't measured in money, but in the impact we leave on others and the integrity with which we live each day. Now, all this wisdom would be meaningless if it remained just words. The great challenge is to transform these ideas into daily habits. Save a fixed percentage of what you earn, avoid unnecessary debt, read every day, take time to reflect before acting, surround yourself with people of integrity, invest in what you understand, and always remember that life is about more than money. These are the actions that, repeated consistently, turn theory into financial freedom. The magic lies in the everyday, in the repetition of small decisions that accumulate like invisible layers until they build an unbreakable fortress. This is your path to financial freedom, and it begins with a small but firm step: deciding. Deciding that you won't live at the mercy of consumerism, deciding that you won't spend for show, deciding that the long term will be your ally, deciding that your time and your reputation are worth more than any check. Financial freedom doesn't come suddenly, but rather as the natural consequence of years of good decisions. It's not a destination you reach in an instant, but a journey that will transform who you are in the process. And this is where the final reflection comes in, a question that can guide you in moments of doubt. when the noise of the world tries to distract you from the essential. What would Warren Buffett do if he were in your shoes? The answer won't always be obvious, but it will likely include the following. Act with patience, seek simplicity instead of complexity, think for yourself, protect your time, invest only in what you understand, keep your integrity intact, and remember that wealth without purpose isn't true wealth. Imagine for a moment, Buffett facing your same circumstances, with your same income, your same challenges, and your same opportunities. What would he do? He wouldn't buy on impulse, he wouldn't chase the latest fad, he wouldn't go into debt to impress, he wouldn't trade his reputation for immediate gain. He'd probably read, observe, wait, and when the time came, act firmly and with long-term vision. That's the mindset you can now adopt. Life puts you in the driver's seat of your own financial story. You can drive with fear and let yourself be carried away by the curves of uncertainty, or you can drive with purpose, using the map of lessons learned to reach your destination. A life of abundance, freedom, and legacy. Money is a tool, never the end. True success lies in living a life worth living, a life that inspires, a life that transcends. So, this journey doesn't end here. Every day will be a blank page on which you can write the book of your own wealth with your decisions. The question has already been asked, and only you can answer it with your actions. What would you do if you were in Warren Buffett's shoes? You already have the theory, the knowledge is already in your hands. Now it's time to take action. So, if this audiobook inspired you and you're ready to continue delving deeper into your personal growth and inner transformation, I invite you to discover another eye-opening audiobook that will change the way you see the world, your decisions, and your potential. Click here, and I'll see you there.